Good morning, everyone. Richard is just talking about the picture on the screen outside, which seems to be becoming part of the bigger story. Anyway, I'll get on with it today and hopefully it'll turn up. Expectations today are that we're going to be in a similar sort of condition to what we started yesterday, but unlike yesterday we were in a decreasing breeze. We will be in a strengthening breeze today. I think it's fair to say yesterday went sort of to the minute on plan, and it was pretty clear that we weren't going to get an improvement in the situation. So we took the early decision to come home, and that's why we're here today. So expectations are that we should meet the wind limit at the start, and hopefully that's greater than 7 knots really. I'd like to think that we might get a little bit more wind than that and expect to finish above 10, 11 knots is sort of my expectation. The plan is to only have one race today, so it's a 2:10 start and thing. So I've just brought you a picture for tomorrow. Looks to be a windier, bumpier day out there. Once again with the breeze in the northeast, and so the sea state's going to sort of get up and be relatively confused, which then lays the foundation for Wednesday. And I'd say that's probably on the optimistic side of the models, but it does look to be the breeze back in the south, maybe slightly west of south, to be a nice 2-race day on Wednesday at this stage. That's our schedule for today, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I know you all probably want to talk to Richard, but hopefully we'll get here shortly. No questions?
If you don't get away today, tomorrow's a reserve day, isn't it? Could you use that?
Tomorrow is a reserve day, and the conditions, apart from the sea state, do look, nice. Have every expectation we'll get there tomorrow. Where it gets a little bit tricky is later in the week, because Friday is a scheduled day, and in the protocol it says I shall do everything in my power to try to not have racing not have the event finished before Saturday. So, if we are up 6-0 at the end of Wednesday, we won't be out till Saturday.
Sorry, you won't?
We won't be racing until Saturday.
So, is the course 1.6 nautical miles again today?
If the breeze is sort of 11, 12 knots, it will probably be maybe up to 1.7 miles, and I'm sort of calling for a C6 course today, which is it's a three lap course, yeah. So I'm trying to keep the course length at sort of around that, 1.5 to 1.8 thing, and then we'll go whether in 8 legs or 6 legs.
To waiting, Richard, just want to know how you control that the team doesn't use their own forecast control, weather forecast before the race.
Sorry, I just didn't quite understand that.
In fact, each team doesn't use public, but they just use public weather forecast, and they are not authorized to use their own weather.
All the teams have their own meteorologists. everywhere, and I think everyone who's involved in the event is, there's so many public weather model forecasts, like you look on predict wind or windy or stuff, there's 6 models, and then there's the sort of more private models. Each of the syndicates have meteorologists and consultants, and sort of, I try to grab all the information you can, and then you've sort of got to, they don't always agree, so you're trying to sort of use your own experience of being out here for every day, how it's going to be interpreted and what sort of local, things happen here that, you should consider as part of what we do for setting things. So that the teams are all very much, looking hard. As you can see, a really big thing for them is which jib they use. That's sort of as a last, that's the last adjustment to what their race is going to be, and they typically, they'll sit it down on either side of the start line, and around, sort of 15 to 10 minutes is crucial for making that selection. You've sort of got to make that selection, I'd say, by the latest by 10 minutes prior to the start, and then, the whole sort of all hell breaks loose, and they sort of go, let's go, mate.
Just going back to the Friday-Saturday thing, what are you allowed to use as discretion? What happens if both days look saleable, but the conditions on Friday are different to Saturday, and one team might think they're being disadvantaged by it not being the Friday conditions, but the Saturday, all that stuff?
Well, each team signed up to the protocol, which is it's written in the head document, and that's kind of the condition of what we're doing. So, it's not to say, but it sort of falls on me. If it looks like rubbish on Saturday and Sunday, there'd have to be an evaluation on whether, you disregard what the protocol says and you go to Friday, or you go back to later in the week into the other reserve days.
Is that a happy position to be in, that you have to make that kind of call?
It's much easier when it's black and white. It's nice when it's written, but like all of these things, sometimes it's got a big decision. You just have to be sort of open and fair-minded about it, and try to produce the right result for the event.
Ian, is there any context to that you can share with us? Is it broadcast rights related? Is it hospitality related? Is there anything behind that protocol that you can explain?
Well, I think when the protocol was written, which these two parties, the defender and the challenger, wrote the protocol and agreed to it, I think it was just very mindful that they wanted the event to start on a weekend and finish on a weekend. So, in all of that, the consideration to, the stature of the event, holding the FA Cup, it doesn't happen on a Thursday or a Friday. The Olympics start and finish on weekends. I think there's just there's a common sort of theme going on here, and that's what was decided. So I think it was, whether you race on Friday or not was built into, well, let's see how the score's going, and then we'll make a decision from there.
So is it 6 anything that would trigger that, or
Is it 6 anything, or do you have to
It says that the America's Cup shall not finish before Saturday.
So 6-5 would be in the same ballpark
We
as
can't
6-7?
get to 6-5.
No.
We can get to 5-1 or 6-0.
A 5-1 would also trigger that?
I think it is, whether it's 5-1 or 6-0, if we go out and hold, we could go out in theory at 5-1, hold one race on Friday, but I think that's unlikely.
Would you like to give your view from the incident yesterday, or just want to comment? Because you were on the starting vessel as well.
Yeah, look, obviously I sit up with the umpires in the office. I've been through all the reviews that the umpires have made. I've read all of the inquiry, which is what's going on in the courtyard out there from INEOS. This is an event that I've seen happen 3 times. You know, I think there was a Lingy versus Britannia. There was one similar the day before, but this was by far the closest ones with the foils. You know, I'm not sure if they were overlapped, but if they weren't, they were very close to overlap. And you know, certainly that's sort of a situation where I think the votes were closer than anyone would like, or could be regarded as safe. So, you know, there's been a penalty awarded. I think the discussion out there is going on to, you know, did the right-of-way vote hold a course to affect the non-right-of-way vote, which was INEOS. I think there's some few telling factors here. You need to look at where the foil arm was on Britannia. It was down and then it went up and then it went down very late. So, you know, it sort of is giving an indication of which way they were intending to turn when they raised the foil. And then there was a last minute change where the foil had to go back down again. So, I think there's sort of discussion about foils and intent and direction changes and who changed direction first and stuff. But anyway, the decision's been made by the umpires and it'll probably be discussed for quite some time, I would imagine.
And hypothetically though, if they had clashed, would you have still gone on with the race?
I suggested if they clashed, there would have been serious damage and we wouldn't have had a race.
Right.
You know, you saw what happened to a Lingy, you know, when they broke a foil arm the other day, and just the sheer hydrodynamic force ripped it out of the side of the boat. I think another 7-ton boat connecting with another 7-ton boat is likely. The thing is that probably neither boat would be in a position to race it. So, as we can see, you know, the boats are not designed for 4.5 loads on the foils. Well, there's a design load for 4.5 load on the foil, but to have another boat hanging on the end of the foil, I don't think is part of their design brief. So, you know, having been on one Australia when she went to the bottom of the water off San Diego, I hate to say it, but you know, certainly a possibility of the boat sinking and ripping a foil arm out of the side is, you know, it's possible. And we saw that on the Lingy. They ripped the foil arm out of the side of the boat last week.
Sorry, I stepped away. Do you know the numbers as to how many metres or centimetres separated them at the closest point?
I've heard between 1 and 2 metres, but I'm not sure if that's between the boats or the foil arms. Certainly I've seen some pictures where it looks like the foil arms are overlapped, you know, with the New Zealand one ahead of the English one. But I haven't.
Is there any provision for redress or anything like that, or is the discussion going on just for education?
Education. There is no regress. Yeah. All right. Looks like we're done. Still no Richard. I'm sorry. He'll have a double day on Wednesday, maybe. So,
So he can't do his own thing when he's done?
well, he can. We'll try to get him in here, but I'll go and see him. Anyway. Welcome back, everyone. He's here. I tried to explain this, Richard, but I was trying not to put my foot into either left or right.
Okay, I'll show you what the umpire saw. We see the anti-clockwise turn by GBR. You see both boats do a pretty aggressive turn towards each other. The umpires have New Zealand hold, GBR keep aiming a little bit longer, and then New Zealand bailing out and GBR bailing out down. They got to about between 2 and 5 metres 2 metres between the hull and the foil and 5 metres between the foils longitudinally, and we penalised GBR. We just had a frank and fruitful discussion with people from GBR, and while they disagree, they felt that New Zealand just dialed them down. The umpires felt that when New Zealand sort of got onto a course and held, GBR then spent roughly 2 seconds holding, if not turning up slightly, which put New Zealand in a position where they thought there'd be a contact, so New Zealand took an option to come down. The GBR believes that New Zealand just hunted them down and never gave them a kicks clear. And I think where we left it is we're agreeing to disagree.
Can you explain the foils up and down?
Yeah, this version you're seeing is actually closer to live umpire, or is the live umpire software. So what you're seeing here for once is our foils. We actually get to see what the foils do. So if you notice in the boats, you've got the grey and the black inside the diamonds. So that tells us what foil's up or down and where they're going. That doesn't get put out publicly, by the way, because then some often in the team will work out how they're all adjusting the foils, which is a trim and sailing performance base. Umpires aren't smart enough to do that, so we're allowed to see it. So part of this turn as well, and while it's not significant, it's not determinant to decide that New Zealand had to keep clear, but you'll see that in part of the turn, GBR swaps to their leeward foil and then lifts the leeward foil up before then dropping it again. And we've been explained that that has nothing, the foil shouldn't be counted, but we would sit there thinking if you're in New Zealand and you watch a boat lift the leeward foil, that suggests they're going up and not down. And again, we don't sail these boats, and we might be wrong, but that at the time was how we adjudicated.
Richard, that last statement there, is that a very crucial part of just where you're saying that we don't sail the boats? Is that was a bit of feedback that I had from Ben yesterday. Is there a sort of a war between umpires and sailors here of how these boats are being sailed and should be sailed and what they can actually achieve and room and opportunity, and are they asking for an expansion of the time that they need to be given to dial away? Where's the argument?
Okay, it's not a war, it is always a tension. Every sailing event, it's there. And I would be crazy to say, oh yeah, we know exactly what these boats can do, especially in a class where we're seeing the performance parameters just on such a high trajectory. So we recognise that. And it's why when we have these meetings, we're trying to grab all a bit of data and knowledge that the umpire team can then keep improving on. So we're on a similar path. We think we can keep improving through the cut as well. We don't want the boats to be close, and this is the discussion going on. We don't want them close, and we're like, well, you guys keep driving into situations where they are close, and then we are sort of relying on the rules to then call it one way or another. And I think that's something. I think there's something that these boats, the rules are getting absolutely stretched as well, because these boats are doing things that normal boats don't do. But I don't think it's a war. I think it's more of when we get to these points and we're told, oh, you guys are putting us into dangerous situations, and thinking, well, no, we're not driving the boats into those situations. But we have a set of rules that sort of we felt it was fair enough with our knowledge to go, at one point in time, we think New Zealand should be bailing out, and they did.
Sorry to hold you, but Pete drove that very, very close and forced a decision either way. If we go back to when...
I'm going to hold it. No.
No?
Pete, that takes two to tango, right? But Pete turned to a straight course and held, at which point for 2 seconds, GBR kept turning towards them. So it's not Pete drove it close, they both drove them close. So let's start with that.
Okay. The broader point being, if we go back to the Ineos against Luna Rossa luffing up when Dylan was luffing, and we remember saying if Ben had been on the port helm, we'd have had a very different outcome because he'd have pushed it harder.
Yeah.
The fact that that was green lighted is the team sort of taken it away, looked at it and said, we have to get in close to force a decision from Richard, otherwise he's going to green light it. And is that decision that was given to Luna Rossa there coming back to haunt you now, in the fact that the Kiwis are going to push as hard, or either boat, not Pete, if it's Ben, if whoever it is, are going to push it as close as possible now into almost a dangerous situation to force a decision.
Having a mindset of being the non-right-of-way boat, forcing a decision, is a very dangerous place to start.
Well, that's why I said Pete. That's why I said Pete.
Well, and I'll keep putting back. It's not just Pete driving into this situation. Both boats drove into that. And the Keighley boat drove in and kept turning towards them for 2 seconds. So I think we're seeing, well, one, we're seeing top racing, and two, we're seeing a situation where it gets into a at-risk situation for that poor attacker. And that's one thing we all agree, they were at risk. And their argument is, now we're at risk, we should be allowed just to bear away and go. And the umpires were, no, we thought you were at risk and you've now gone across that line and we're penalising. So we're playing on that edge. And so are they.
Richard, you saw it happen yesterday. How clear was it for you, and how quickly did you make a decision on the outcome?
Remembering I have 2 umpires who are making this call, I oversee them, and for them it was a clear call. The way they talk amongst themselves, and they sit there and they recognise the whole of course by New Zealand, so they did a quick, in fact they didn't have to review the scenario. They went through it, confirmed each of the points, agreed.
Can you just remind us what each of those umpires can hear? What comms are they listening to during the race?
Each umpire will adopt a boat and adopt those comms, but in the same time, their primary role is to keep talking about what they believe is going to be happening. So, and we've had it explained to us this morning. And by the way, I don't hear those comms. I have enough stuff going on in my head at that time. But we had it explained that Pete was talking about at some point about a dial down. We don't know where that was. We just heard about that. But that said, you still tick the boxes going, he's held straight. They got to a point where he needs now to avoid. Now, if we didn't think he had to avoid, if we didn't do that, then a whole new set of what ifs occurred. But we believe they got to that point to make the penalty apply before it became a dial down.
So they're only listening to the comms that are on board, but they're not listening to the broadcast. That's nothing to do with what they.
No, we don't. No, we can't listen to broadcast. It's just, there was just too much in their heads.
Ben said yesterday that it was a similar case to the Lingy case. How do you see that?
The Lingy case, the difference when Ben is the right-of-way boat, Lingy took an option to luff to keep clear, at which point GDR came up about 10 degrees to almost block that luff. At which point Lingy then went, I need to keep clear the other direction, at which point GBR came down. And so I think, remember we said that GBR was at risk in that situation because they sort of blocked one side, then likely they kept clear for the other one. There is a third one to think of, which is early on, it might have even been the final preliminary regatta. GBR entered with France, and France was a little bit late and just crossed the line. And they took an up option. GBR sort of started to chase them after that, and France went across their bow to try and keep clear. And we went, no, if France took an up option, don't then change your mind and then not keep clear. We're not going to sort of give that guy, the keep clear boat, a right to do it. So there are other ones we've done. So we think this is still consistent to what we've done in the past.
So again, the call with this one is that GBR didn't clear enough, and the thing with the foil, just as a hint that they didn't do enough to keep clear.
The-
Is that called?
When the right-of-way boat stopped turning and held its course to a point that we believe it was, they had a reasonable apprehension of a collision, we had GBR still turning towards them, if not holding, and then it became an issue of, and this is, and be fair, they're saying, GBR says, yeah, at that point we could have turned down and everything would have been fine. And we're like, well, at that point we think the right-of-way boat is thinking, I need to get out of here.
Sorry, last one. Was there any point from you that they could laugh before this incident and cross in front like they did the day before, or was it too late and was it better positioned from New Zealand?
At the time, the umpires weren't talking about that. I must admit, I thought they early on had an option to go up, but I didn't want to. Certainly didn't want to talk about that with the guys because that's now hypothetical. But it was almost looked like they had it just harden up and go. And it was one of the discussions we had. It's both where the bows are aiming, but also I think we had this difference of agreement where we're saying that there's also an exercise where the boats are on the wind lines, if you like. You know, when GBR are higher up, further upwind, they've got that option also available. But that's now into hypotheticals. I think that
Because maybe that's referring to the last point you said. How experienced are you to sail these boats? You're not. And these guys, they change their helmsman in this situation. Is this a point you're discussing as well? Because first Ben is sailing, and well, on the other boat as well, like Nathan steered in his tag, and afterwards Pete sailed. So there must be some delay because they're changing their positions, and obviously their communications are different.
we come back to a very basic concept, which is you put yourself as keep clear boat. You must make sure you can keep clear, right? And then you play. So instead of going, oh, we're going to keep giving you more room, that's when I think as a rule we're bringing the boats closer together. We're almost trying to say, well, make sure you do these manoeuvres in a safe place. Now, you know, we've had other scenarios where rules are changing in dynamics, but a very basic level starts with, if you're going to do this, make sure you put yourself in a position you can keep clear.
A question from the chief seats, and I might have missed this, but in your discussion outside, were both sides accepting of your view, or were INEOS still arguing their position?
INEOS, I don't believe INEOS accept our view. I think that we all recognise that they were at risk, and then I think INEOS is, to try and paraphrase their position, was they don't believe the option there was to go down for New Zealand to avoid, so they felt it was they were hunting them down, and that's probably where we had the difference of opinion. We felt that New Zealand it was an option for them to go down when they believed they were at risk of a collision.
And they went first.
Thrashing first.
Just following on from that, INEOS both teams have talked, or INEOS have talked with you today, and there's been discussion. That's okay. After that, do both teams realise how close they were to a disastrous incident? Ian pointed out earlier on, very quickly, these boats can sink if you rip an arm off. And are both teams aware that it must not happen? Is that the feeling you get? That sort of reality has kicked in now?
I think, I hope so. I really do. I think the fact that we had the meeting and the fact that I know Giles came in to give also a sales perspective, I have a belief that both teams are very aware of any contact with these boats is not a good thing.
Can we say that clearer heads now prevail?
I think Pete made some commentary when he finished the race about it. I think Peter Burling laid down a little bit of commentary after as soon as he finished the race about the closeness of the incident.
Had there been a collision, does that then change the onus then? No, yeah, exactly. I mean, no one wants to see that. But I'm just thinking in normal racing, you might be the right way boat, but that doesn't obviously give you a right to go and clatter through someone. And if you do, you find yourself then on the wrong side of the law, so to speak. How would that have worked in this situation had there been a collision?
The umpire team only had a quick discussion about that as a hypothetical. And so what you're talking about is the rule about contact and serious damage. And so the umpires would call the scenario not thinking of that on the water. I won't go into the dross what we can and can't do, but then what we need to look at under the rule is at the point New Zealand believe INEOS wasn't keeping clear, is it possible for them to do something to avoid? And could they? That's really the question. And so suddenly that is where things like the discussion of the boards and all the other stuff will come into it. And yet that would be one where I'm sure I'll spend a lot more time talking to you about. But let's hope the clearer heads have prevailed. Any questions for Andy? How's the penalty?
Run away.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.